When you're about to set off on an adventure, you need to be prepared. Things like a map to know where you're going, some snacks for whenever you get hungry, but most importantly, a weapon to defend yourself. You're not prancing through the yellow brick road, you don't know what kind of horrors you'll encounter out there, but the question is, what kind of weapon to take? Now, I've never been on an adventure, unless you count getting out of bed an adventure, so I've never had to make this decision. But if I did, I do have a couple of options. I could go with a sword, a classic choice, a whip, quite useful in Transylvania, a gun for long-range combat, maybe even a lollipop if I wanted to be a badass. But while I was doing my summer reading, I found my weapon of choice, and I knew what I needed to learn how to use it. It didn't work, so I might as well talk about the game. This was my experience with Power Blade. The year is 2191, and Earth has become a peaceful utopia governed by a master computer. Okay, first line in, and we've already got a wrong prediction. Call me crazy, but I think things would play out a little differently in this scenario. But instead of the computer going rogue, it's attacked by aliens. Now, the computer has gone haywire, and the peace has been disturbed. Now it's up to Nova, who does not resemble any fictional robots whatsoever, to save us all. A relatively simple story, as were most stories in this era of video games, but with that out of the way, it's time to select your difficulty. I chose Expert because I'm not a scrub. Choose your stage, and jump right in. Alright, the game is afoot, and now it's time to use your trusty boomerang, which is not very useful. It's got a very short range, and it isn't too powerful. You're telling me this was used as a weapon? So far, it seems more useful as a back scratcher. However, that's only when you start off, as throughout your adventure, enemies will drop upgrades for your boomerang. Upgrades that increase your boomerang's power, how far you can throw it, and even allow you to throw multiple blades at once. Plus, you can throw your boomerang in 8 directions, allowing you to take on aerial threats. And when fully upgraded, you can run around throwing orange blades of death like a madman, just like the average Austenite. But there are a few more tools at your disposal to help you out on your journey. Enemies can drop grenades that act as screen nukes that are really useful if you still need a few more upgrades. There are these bottle caps, I think, that you can find in each stage that can heal you back to full health in an emergency. And most importantly of all, hamburgers. Because what else can you use to improve your health? That's why I eat at least 10 a day. So overall, you definitely have a lot of useful items at your disposal. Your main weapon is quite handy, fun to use, and very satisfying to upgrade. You have healing items both on the ground and on standby. The controls are tight and responsive, and you even have screen nukes. And if all of that wasn't enough, there's one more item you can find that can make you go even further beyond. This is footage of a man who's lost everything. He wasted all of his money gambling, got divorced after his first date, and has a PC that can't even run Mountain King. Once someone with dreams, he's now a broken man. But not as broken as the Power Blade. The Power Blade is an armor set hidden in each level, and if you manage to find it, your boomerangs turn into lasers that can go through walls and decimate anything that gets in your way. Plus, you don't lose any health while using it, and can take up to 3 hits before it's destroyed. Finding this is always a treat, and its power is reliant on the upgrades you carry, meaning that if you find it without upgrades, it's not very helpful. But if you're fully upgraded, then this armor turns you into a walking weapon of mass destruction. It's insanely fun to use, and if you manage to beat the level with it, it carries over to the next level. I might as well have turned on cheat codes, this thing is so useful. How could I possibly lose with this much power? With all that in mind, now it's time for the levels themselves. Power Blade has 7 sectors you need to get through, and I thought they were all fun. Except for one, but we'll get to that. And one of my favorite things about them is their size. They may not be as big as this bottle of Sunny D. I just wanted an excuse to buy Sunny D. But they aren't linear either. Each one has different pathways to the boss and hidden areas that contain goodies. It made the stages feel more like an adventure and incentivized me to explore every level to find things like a healing capsule or the Power Blade armor. Plus their themes are pretty cool. Sector 1 is a launch base, Sector 2 is a power plant, Sector 3 is a biological research center, Sector 4 is an unfinished construction site, Sector 5 is a shipyard that has a stage layout actually shaped like a ship, which is really cool, Sector 6 is in the city, and Sector 7 is the control center. My favorites have to be Sector 3 for its aesthetics and abundance of platforming segments. I like how you start Sector 4 inside before making your way to the skies, culminating in this long stretch before the boss where you have to jump across moving platforms while dodging oncoming enemies. And finally Sector 7 for its vertical design. Making the final level one big climb to the top was an efficient way of giving it an air of finality. However, while I do like how explorative they are, in practice this turns out to be a double-edged sword. One downside of the larger stages is how stingy Powerblade is with its checkpoints. Each level only has 2 checkpoints, one at the boss fight, and the other I'll get to later. Don't have either of them? Then you're getting sent back to the beginning. This already sucks, but since the levels are so vast, it makes it even more annoying whenever you die near the end of the stage. Especially if it's from the bane of gamers from the 80s and early 90s. Yup, we're on the NES, which means we have to deal with knockback. How fun. My favorite part is when you grab the Power Blade, which doesn't respawn until game over by the way, get ready to kick some gum, and lose it immediately thanks to knockback. Left without armor, or ass. Actually, my favorite has to be these armadillos in Sector 2. Over 50% of my deaths were from knockback, and over 50% of that 50% were from these armadillos. Dang it. Shoot! Oh, come on. Okay, I'm gonna have to be more careful, so I'll just slowly approach it.
Psych!
Alright, finally got past it. Now nothing can stand in my... Well, great. Now I have a new fear. I better start watching my back. Another thing to worry about thanks to the bigger stages is the inevitable decay of everything that we know and love, lost to the sands of time, and forgotten by those who walk the earth we're buried in. Also known as the time limit. This was another common aspect of NES games that I find quite unnecessary, ignoring the logistics of this because I'm running around throwing boomerangs to take down Space Lennon, but doesn't having a timer seem counterintuitive if you're designing bigger levels that encourage you to explore for goodies? I didn't take Video Game Design 101, but that seems kinda stupid to me. Now all of these annoyances are bad enough, but there's one thing that really makes all of these issues worse than they already are. One unique mechanic in Power Blade is that in order to fight the boss at the end of each stage, you need an ID card. Where do you get an ID card?
So what can I do for today, sweetie?
Everything.
Your registration?
I have it.
Alternatively, you can find your contact hidden in each stage who will give you their ID card for you to use. Some of them are hard to miss, but others not so much. Sector 2 is by far the worst offender. It's already the longest stage in the game, but the ID card system makes this issue so much worse. At the start of the stage, you can choose to either take the top path or the bottom path. The contact is on one of them, and if you choose the wrong one like I did on my first playthrough, you'll make it to the end without the ID card and get denied entry into the club. Because of that, I ended up having to backtrack through this massive level and wasn't even able to make it back in time before the timer ran out. At that point, it would have been better to just kill myself. That's not fun. Like, just because I took one path at the start of the stage, I've now lost one life and wasted my time. This alone single-handedly makes Sector 2 my least favorite in the game. This also happened in Sector 3 where I found a shortcut that also had some goodies in it, but in the process I missed my contact and had to backtrack, meaning I actually would have saved more time if I didn't take that shortcut. At least you keep the ID card permanently when you do get it, and should you die after meeting your contact, you do respawn where you found them. This is the only other checkpoint in the level, and it is nice, but you better make those lives count because if you game over, not only are you sent back to the start anyways, but your contact doesn't respawn and you lose that checkpoint. This system didn't need to be here. It's easily my least favorite part of the game, and sure, you may get luckier than I did and find all the contacts on your first go, but I just don't like that you might have to do the level all over again because you missed a pathway. If all of this makes it sound like Power Blade is a tough-as-nails unforgiving platformer, trust me when I say it's really not. Yeah, everything I've mentioned is annoying, particularly for newcomers, but generally speaking, I don't think Power Blade is that difficult. You have an arsenal of useful tools at your disposal, most of the enemies aren't that threatening, and outside of a few tight jumps, I didn't think the platforming was that demanding. Plus, there are only 7 levels, so even with all the times I was sent back to square one, I was still able to beat this game in one sitting. It's a game that doesn't overstay its welcome, though 1 or 2 more levels would have been nice. It also would have been nice if you could get more than 3 lives per continue, as that would have made the game less annoying. But that's cool, that's fine. I get it. Okay, I'm probably not doing a good job at convincing you that this game isn't that punishing, but trust me, if you're decent at platformers, you can beat it in one day even with all these obstacles.
You can do it!
The boss fights also won't give you much trouble, especially if you have the Power Blade. Like, geez, look at this damage. Generally speaking, I'd say Power Blade's boss fights are alright. Sectors 3, 4, and 5 have the weakest boss fights in the game, as they all have very easy patterns, and Sector 3 is just an enemy gauntlet, which isn't too exciting. Sector 1 and 6 have you dealing with robots, and they're pretty satisfying to deal with, even if they're not all that threatening. Sectors 2 and 7 have my favorite boss fights in the game by far. Charizard over here is pretty fast and powerful. Not only do you have to dodge its fireballs, it also rushes to the other side of the screen, either in a straight line or a curve. You have to be on your toes at all times to properly react when it rushes towards you, and I like that. It's the most challenging boss fight in the game in my opinion, and I died to it more times than I care to admit. Which probably wouldn't have happened if I just used the healing item, but shut up, don't tell me how to live my life. And while the final boss's first phase is pretty easy, the second phase is much better and tougher. You have to avoid its rain of fire and have to wait for it to expose its weak point to damage it. In fact, I was able to beat it with only a sliver of health remaining. And just like that, I successfully took down the alien menace. Now society can begin to rebuild and find itself in another crisis later down the line. Overall, I definitely enjoyed my time with Power Blade. I loved the upgrade mechanic, I dug the level design. Not you! There were some pretty cool boss fights, and I haven't even mentioned how good it looks and sounds. My favorite music is the prologue, Sector 2, Sector 3, and Sector 7. I just think it's a shame that there were all these little annoyances that stopped me from saying I loved it. Little did I know that I had made one big error before even starting the game. Now I, like many gamers, love to relish in achievements that mean nothing in the real world. Anytime I beat an old game infamous for its difficulty, I get a real sense of accomplishment. So naturally I went with Expert Mode cause like I said, I'm not a scrub. Turns out the scrubs got the last laugh here. There are 2 major differences between normal mode and expert mode. For one, the timer is extended from 300 seconds to a whopping 999 seconds. But even more insane is the removal of knockback entirely. This change effectively gets rid of 2 of my main issues with the game. Not only are you now free from cheap deaths like this, but now you're free to explore the stage at your own pace. And if you make it to the end without the ID card, you can now backtrack without worrying about the time limit. Sure, the ID card mechanic still sucks, and you still only get 3 lives per continue, but this makes the game much less annoying. So yeah, I would definitely recommend starting on normal mode. That way if you do decide to crank up the difficulty, you'll know where the contexts are and are more prepared for the more annoying parts. I definitely wish I knew that from the get-go. And that's Power Blade. Not a perfect platformer, but still a very enjoyable one. If I had to compare it to another NES game, it would definitely be Mega Man. Heck, even Nintendo Power compared it to Mega Man. They're very comparable in terms of difficulty and controls, they both allow you to choose the stage order, it has an energy tank equivalent that's called... oh, hold on just a sec. The energy tank, and it even has the disappearing blocks. But I didn't want to keep comparing it to Mega Man because I didn't want to make it look like it was just a Mega Man clone. I think it's different enough to stand out, for better and for worse. But despite its issues, I'd still recommend it. It's quite fun. If only it wasn't trapped on the NES with no other way to play it whatsoever. Anyways, that's enough for today, and until next time, I'm a Talking Pringle, and thanks for watching.